Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights podcast. Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with another episode of Obsidian Nights, and today I have with me Melinda, and we will be doing Catelyn 5. Melinda, would you like to introduce yourself to the people?
Yes, my name is Melinda. I am a big fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, as everyone else here is, I'm sure. I am not active in a lot of spaces that most people are. I have a Twitter account, and it's Mindy, OHHH Mindy. And I talk about politics, so if you don't like that, don't follow me. But I also talk sometimes about A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So I'll leave your link to your Twitter and everything in the description box. So I'm glad you could come. We're going to be talking about my favorite person ever. Just kidding. So we're going to be talking about Catelyn, and this chapter, I feel, is one of those chapters where Catelyn outdoes herself. She just outthinks herself. This is one of the major things that cause the War of Five Kings. Or yeah, it's one of the things. It's not the thing, but it's definitely one of the things.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely a lot to be said for what happens here for kicking things off in a very obvious way.
Yes. So Sir Roderick and Catelyn Stark are going through the Riverlands, and Tyrion is coming down from the wall, and they happen to meet at an inn. But there's so much other stuff going on in this chapter. I feel like there's a lot of political exposition that goes on in this chapter, especially when it comes to Robert's Rebellion and how things went down in the Riverlands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they talk about, like, you get a lot of information about where loyalties lie.
Yes, you do. So they're at this inn, the inn at the cross. Is it the inn at the crossroads?
It is. It's the inn at the crossroads. Yes.
Yes. We're at the inn at the crossroads, and Catelyn used to actually stay there when she was young and traveling with her father. So we're also introduced to Catelyn's father. He doesn't appear in the chapter, but we get a lot of exposition on him. So Catelyn's father is Lord Hoster Tully. She says that he was a restless man in his prime, always riding somewhere. And she happened to stay at the inn at the crossroads when she was younger. So Hoster Tully as a character, I kind of wish we had more about him. Like, I wish we had an actual, like, not a POV, but more information, like an actual conversation that he has. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really have that. We have, like, his waning moments.
He's a very, yes. And he is someone who has, I think he probably has too much information.
Yeah.
He's one of those people that could shed a little too much light, but I am intrigued by him as well, because he seems to be someone who was very politically motivated, ambitious, because it seems odd to me that Catelyn traveled with him so much. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had a brother and a sister, and she just mentions herself in this instance that she traveled with him quite a lot. And that made me think that he was taking her places to introduce her to people for possible marriage arrangements or things of that nature. That just seemed like something he would be doing. I can't think why else he would take her.
I think you're probably hitting the nail on the head. That seems the most likely reason. But also, I think that Catelyn inherited his ambition and his like you said, he's very active in the politics of Westeros. He's very ambitious, and so is Catelyn. Like, when we're first introduced to Catelyn, I think it's in a Ned chapter, we find out that she actually does have these Southern ambitions, for not only for like Sansa, but for her kids as well.
Yeah, she's all on board initially for Sansa to marry Joffrey and become queen of everyone. And for someone who is a mother in the high north of the realm, it's really interesting to see her push for something like that when typically the north stays out of most things. So you can see that there's a lot of ambition, and especially bringing her from the Riverlands up there, she's brought all of that with her, where Ned is very uncomfortable with it all.
Right. And it is Catelyn that convinces Ned to go to King's Landing. I know that in the show they kind of did that differently, but it's actually Catelyn who convinces him, like, you have to go.
Yes. And when he decides that, she's a little bit heartbroken because she's suddenly going to lose him and half of her family.
Yes.
But she's willing to pay that price.
Yeah, she is, because she's ambitious. I'm just kidding.
No, it's true. She is. She's ambitious. But I don't view that as a negative thing. I think she's ambitious because if we think of our own sort of medieval times, all the goal is for a woman in these times is to have her children marry well and to further the house in lands and titles. And so for her to want these things for her children, it's not necessarily bad. It's just in this story, it turns out terribly.
Yes, it does. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing that she has ambition. I think it's just foolish to say that she doesn't. I know a lot of people are like, oh, she's not really ambitious. She doesn't really she's just trying to protect her kids and she's just trying to do this. No, she's ambitious. Like she's no more or no less ambitious than Cersei.
Exactly. She is. And we just have a viewpoint of her from a motherhood, of her loving family and all of this. And Cersei comes from just raw ambition.
Yeah.
It's just not hidden behind layers of love and affection. It's just out for everyone to see.
Yes.
And so in a way, Cersei's ambition is more honest than anyone else's.
Yes. I agree with that. I love that analyzation. I love it. So Catelyn, I will say, she is, while she does things that are questionable and she does things that I would deem almost stupid, she does have a very political mind. Like, I feel, I've said this previously, I feel if Ned had actually taken her with him to King's Landing, that she would have helped him greatly. Her presence in King's Landing would have helped him greatly because she does know politics and Southern politics, especially, way more than Ned.
Yes. I haven't heard you say that before, but that's a great point because she's so savvy. I mean, she would have seen through things that Ned naively doesn't, because he's so honest and he thinks everyone plays by the same rules when clearly they do not. And he has, as he says, he has no taste for any of these games that the people play. Whereas I think Catelyn, especially because she did travel with Hoster Tully, I'm sure she saw a lot of negotiation, a lot of talks, and was in rooms where these talks were taking place. And she probably learned a lot about each of these houses and how they operate.
Yeah. One thing I noticed to me that stood out in this chapter was that she is very political. She is analytical too. Like, she's saying, do I go to Riverrun? Do I tell my father to get ready for war? Does Riverrun need to be ready? Do I go to Lysa? Like, she's actually thinking ahead. Like, a Catelyn gets a lot of shit because it's easy to look at her and say, damn, she just does, makes these emotional split decisions. And she does that, like, with Jaime. I feel like that was an emotional decision to let Jaime go. With Tyrion, I also think it was an emotional decision. But that's not to say that they weren't thought out.
Yes. And I think one of the things that's kind of overlooked in this chapter, a couple of things. she's looking out when she's sitting in her rooms. They get a room in the bell under the bells, which I found interesting anyway. But she's looking out of this glass that's milky and it's full of bubbles and it's raining outside and it's really hard to see. And so in her mind's eye, she kind of goes back to what she knows. She said, it says, the rain obscured the fields beyond the crossroads, but Catelyn saw the land clear enough in her memory. And I think that is a metaphor for how she's seeing everything. So even though she's very politically savvy, she sees everything as how it was. So she sees how he was. She sees Lysa, how she was. She's not considering and taking into account that these things have all changed in these years that have passed since she's last seen them. And she's not, even though she tells Ned, you knew Robert the man, now you don't know Robert the king, the same thing applies to her in the way she's viewing everyone in every place. She thinks everything is sort of the same as it was, and she can trust Peter Baelish, and she can go to her sister with confidence and not understanding that she's seeing things through her memory.
Go off. Go off. That, I love that. That is a great analogy. Like, I'm not even kidding. That's really, no, seriously, because that's the problem with Catelyn, is that she doesn't account that Lysa's going to be crazy now. And she doesn't account that Littlefinger is a traitor now. Like, she doesn't account for these things. And she is seeing things how they were and not how they are.
Exactly. And she's got great intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say.
Right. Right.
I mean, God bless her.
So she's actually in a disguise. That's also very smart.
Mm-hmm.
For her and Sir Roderick to be traveling as father and daughter. I thought it was kind of strange because I'm like, you've been to this inn. You're like the daughter of the Lord here. How do people not know who you are?
Yeah, I thought it was strange when she pulled out dry clothes and put them on. I was like, what kind of clothes? She must have known that she had to go in disguise all the way to King's Landing. Yes. But I mean, she was really prepared. If she had some rough spun clothes, like not her lady's clothes, to take with her to be ready for these kind of occasions. And she was also very bold when Jason Mallister was coming down the road, and she just stood there and didn't cover her head. It was almost like daring him to recognize her. And I was like, what is your goal here? Because if he did recognize her, she would have, Lucy has some splaining to do.
Right.
And so on the one hand, she's very cautious this trip. On the other hand, it's like she's gotten to her home and she's comfortable. She's just, this is my place. I know my people. I know how this works. I own this. And so she's very bold in that instance, and that encourages her to go to the inn where they must know there are going to be dozens of people traveling to King's Landing for that tourney.
Yes.
And so the odds are she's going to run into a lot of people she might know.
Yeah, I mean, it is, the roads are packed at this point. That is a huge, like that, the hands tourney, like that, what was it, 80,000 gold dragons? Like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, everyone in the realm every knight and high lord in the realm is going to try to come to that for glory, basically, and money, It's a big gamble that she takes here. I'm not sure why she does this. I'm not sure, except for I think she just became comfortable because in her father's lands. She's like, I got this.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most likely explanation. We also get introduced to Marillion.
Oh, bless.
I don't know if you watched The Witcher, but Marillion reminds me of Yasker.
Yes. I actually, rereading this chapter, I was like, I love him. He's so vain, and he's so young and just pompous, and it's hilarious. It's just funny, the whole interaction.
Yeah, I love it. So Marillion, for those of you who haven't read the books and you're just following along with Obsidian Nights, Marillion is a singer, and he will appear more and more. And he also says that he was at Riverrun before. He was a singer, and we found out Edmure hates singers.
What I love in this interaction is that Catelyn is so relaxed. She's just playing along, and she's goading him to say more and more. But at the same time, he asks them questions, and she tells him that they've just come from King's Landing, which that's another thing that I think was very, very ill-conceived, because he's obviously someone, he talks as much as I do, which is a lot. He talks 90 to nothing to every person that he meets, and he's ambitious. So if she were to be found out, which we find out later she is, you could tell everyone that she said she was traveling from King's Landing.
Yeah, that was stupid. Like, you went through all this trouble to cover that where you're coming from, who you are, just to tell a singer. And in this story, I find that singers are not trustworthy. They're just not. Like, if you look at the one that Tyrion put in the
one he cooked in the stew or whatever.
Yes.
I don't remember his name. I can't think of his name.
I can't think of his name. I know it, and I can't think of it. But he was ready to sell out Tyrion's secrets, and wrote
a whole song about it.
Right. And then you have Tom O'Sevens, which is a spy for the Brotherhood Without Banners in Riverrun right now. So there's something about these singers that they're all shady.
Yeah, they're very schemy, and they have no qualms. I mean, imagine a High Lord and trying to blackmail him with a song talking about Tyrion. I can't imagine doing that and being that bold and thinking there would be no recourse. However, I don't think he thought it would be quite that bad.
No, I don't think he did. He underestimated Tyrion.
Yes, but Marillion, yes, you can't trust a singer. Why would you the one piece of information that she should have kept to herself for sure is that she traveled from King's Landing, because there would be no reason that she could give for being down there.
Yeah.
That would make any sense to anyone. And all of these people traveling to the tourney, if she's discovered, and Marillion tells them they're all going to King's Landing, the word would get out for sure.
It would. And in the process that all this is going down, in walks Tyrion Lannister. And this is where it kind of gets tense. The chapter gets tense, because the last thing that Catelyn heard was that Tyrion's blade is the blade that tried to kill Bran. It was Tyrion's blade. And she heard it from Littlefinger. And like you said, she's looking at how things were and not how things are. So she takes that as the truth. That is it. Littlefinger said it's your blade. It's your blade. So Tyrion comes in, and they recognize each other. Well, Tyrion recognizes Catelyn. Tyrion says, "Lady Stark, what an unexpected pleasure. I was sorry to miss you at Winterfell." And then that's when Marillion realizes that she's Catelyn Stark.
Which is great, because she had asked him if he ever traveled to Winterfell, and he said, "Why would I?" And something like they only listen to the music of wolves or something to that effect. And so this was really funny, because not only is she Lady Stark, but she's obviously a Tully, and he's bragged about how much he is loved at Riverrun.
Yes. And so she says, "I was still Catelyn Tully the last time I bedded here," she told the innkeep. She could hear the muttering, feel the eyes upon her. Catelyn glanced around the room at the faces of the knights and sworn swords, and took a deep breath to slow the frantic beating of her heart. Did she dare take the risk? There was no time to think it through, only the moment, and the sound of her own voice ringing in her ears. So earlier, she was thinking about, like, she's just said that, like, she doesn't have any time to think this through. She just has to seize the moment. Like, the moment has presented itself. She has to either act or not. She doesn't have time to think about it. But earlier, she was thinking about the loyalty of the bannermen of House Tully. So she was thinking about House Blackwood and House Bracken and the Freys and House Derry. Like, she was thinking of all these people and how they fought with her father. And it's funny because out of all those people, the Freys had the most people there, but the Freys were the people that she was concerned about the most.
Yes.
And it seems some foreshadowing.
It's been foreshadowing because her father gave Walder Frey the name the late Lord Frey because he brought his armies to the Trident after the battle was over, and so no one could really tell which side he was going to join. And of course, he says their side, obviously, but you know, his loyalty is always in question because he's a shady guy.
Yeah.
And the most people there are the Freys. And again, she, as you say, she wonders who would join. And in that same thought process, she says, it must not come to war. We must not let it, or something to that effect. And she says that, she's thinking that in her head, like it must not come to war. But I think what happens with Tyrion, he walks in and she envisions him bleeding and choking on his blood and all of this stuff. And as she sits there and he's talking, he's so arrogant and, you know, and he's got that swagger because he's a Lannister. He's splashing gold to get a room from people because there are no rooms left. So he's tossing a coin in the air and it's blinking and glittering. And as he's doing all this, her anger just rises because all she's thinking about is Bran and how she thinks he tried to kill her favorite child. Not just any child, but Bran is clearly her favorite.
Mm-hmm. He is.
And it just overtakes her. But at the same time, she's so angry. At the same time, she's thankful that she's far enough away and there are so many people in there that he's not going to notice her. But Marillion steps up and asks to sing for him. And suddenly he sees Catelyn.
Yes.
And the jig is up.
It's up. So Catelyn basically tells those men, all her father's bannermen, to seize Tyrion. She said, "This man came a guest into my house and there conspired to murder my son, a boy of 7, she proclaimed to the room at large, pointing. Sir Roderick moved to her side, his sword in hand. In the name of King Robert and the good lords you serve, I call upon you to seize him and help me return him to Winterfell to await the king's justice." She did not know what was more satisfying, the sounds of a dozen swords drawn at once, or the look on Tyrion Lannister's face. So, I want to play from the other side. I want to say how stupid this is. It's stupid because she hasn't thought it out. She hasn't thought out like what will happen. She knows that Ned is in King's Landing and she knows that Ned is like to face consequences for this, which does like Jory basically loses his life and some other guards lose their life because of this. Jaime Lannister retaliates against, like, it's one retaliation after another. There's a cat's ball hired to kill Bran, and then in retaliation for that, they take Tyrion, and in retaliation for taking Tyrion, Jaime attacks Ned in the streets of King's Landing. So there's like this, the ante is getting upped every time until it's just full-blown war. And I think that the smart thing that Catelyn did was announce that she was taking Tyrion to Winterfell, but then take him to the Vale. I think she'd have probably fared better if she'd have just took him to Winterfell, but she went to the Vale with her crazy-ass sister. But when I look at it, it just seems like such an irrational decision.
One of the things, I mean, I can understand that. On the other hand, it's sort of compounded. She sort of has to take Tyrion. And the reason I think that is because she's backed herself into a corner by announcing that where she came from. So now this singer knows where she came from, and that's King's Landing. She knows that information is going to get out, and that will put them all in danger if Tyrion goes back to King's Landing and asks his sister, or, why was she there? And of course she was there secretly. No one knows she was there. And so I think she sort of painted herself into a corner, and her only option in that moment, one of the things that I thought about in this is when she did this, she abandoned her family up north because she should have gone to her children, obviously. She abandoned her duty, which was she was given explicit instructions on what to do from Ned. But did she abandon her honor? So family duty, honor. And I think that's the question that I leave this chapter with. I don't think she abandoned her honor. I think that she did the one thing that she thought she could do. I feel like she should have taken him to Riverrun because they were in the most danger if war came. And she even thought about that.
Yeah.
But I think she had just painted herself into a corner. I feel like she was so angry. Imagine your son is lying or could be dying in a bed, and you think this man killed him. I don't know, but in this day and age, I always said if somebody did something to my child, they wouldn't make it to court,
Yeah.
And so I think it's pure emotion that she goes off of, because she's logical in this chapter all the way to that. She thinks about, will the bannermen be, will they support us? Will they come if my father calls his banners? Will they come? She thinks about who was loyal to the Targaryens and who was loyal to Robert Baratheon, who fought for whom during Robert's rebellion. And she thinks it all out. And she says, again, that it cannot come to war. It must not. And in this moment, her emotions just take over. And she takes him. And when she takes him, I think it's funny because when she's talking to the Freys, which this is the first introduction of the Freys to the story, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. And she's talking to them, and they, Lord Walder they're saying Lord Walder as well. And he's about to take his next wife. They would love for her father to be at the wedding. And Tyrion Lannister, because this is like his 8th wife, because he's so old. Tyrion, it says Tyrion Lannister sniggered, and that was when Catelyn knew he was hers. And it's because he laughed at the phrase. I think that it's because she's like, I'm going to have their backing. She thinks in her mind, I'm going to have their backing, because you can't laugh at the phrase. They already they don't feel like they get any respect in the realm. And if you laugh at them, I think that's when she thought, I've got him. And this is going to go my way. Now, everything as a result is terrible, but I understand her. I understand how you can get to that point of you're so angry, and this man has walked in and he's being very pompous and arrogant, and she just wants to choke him out because she thinks he tried to kill her son.
Yeah. See, I think George does that a lot with the women in the books, with the exception of Daenerys and Arya. Well, later Arya, not early Arya, but he has them act on emotion a lot. And he doesn't necessarily do that with the men. Like, you'll never see Stannis acting out of emotion. You never see Jon Snow acting out of emotion, like something that could cause a war.
True to a degree, because Jon Snow tried to leave the Night's Watch and join Robb. So I think he did, but he was young, and so his emotions got the better of him, and his friends saved him. But I do think you're right. For the most part, it is mostly women who respond in emotion, because even Ned very rarely loses his temper. He's very logical and methodical to some degrees. And of course, Stannis, I'm not sure he has emotion.
I won't even say it's just women. I feel like it's mothers. Like, I see it a lot in Cersei. I see it a lot in Catelyn. I see it a lot in Daenerys, even though Daenerys is like the mother of dragons. She doesn't really act on emotion. She's a very analytical person, but when it comes to certain things, you can tell that there are a lot of emotions behind it, and it's why she's doing things. And I know, like, every major decision that Catelyn has made has been on emotions.
Yes. Her emotions do get away from her.
And it's basically a mother's emotions. Like, it always boils down to her children.
Yeah, and I think that's why some people love Catelyn for her mothering, because in some ways, because they also,
I was about to say, in some ways,
because she abandoned her girls. She didn't care about, Rickon and all of this. But I think that her attention is so divided between 5 children that it's got to be difficult. But I think that, yes, she has a lot of love for her family. It is her first and foremost always seems to be family. Yeah. And in this moment, she abandons her family up north, and she abandons her children, and she abandons her duty, which is to do what Ned has said. And again, that's where I go back to honor. Was this honorable, or was this, I don't know that she abandoned her honor.
I don't think it was honorable.
You don't? Okay.
I don't. I feel like the honorable thing to do would have been to, like, listen to her husband, because it puts him in such a bad position. Like, he's already has, like, 2 knives at his throat right now. So yes. Her doing this, like, brings a 3rd knife at his throat. Think the honorable thing to do would have been to ride to King's Landing with Tyrion and present it how it's going to be presented. But to kidnap, like, he's a high lord. Yes. To kidnap a high lord, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we can call that honorable, no matter what she thought it was.
Fair. That's a fair point, because it's written her to, she has acted purely on emotion.
I was going to say, and he was careful to put that part in there that she didn't have time to think about it. She only had the moment, and she had to seize it. So had she thought about it, had she had time to think, I don't think she would have taken him.
I think, and I think that's clear in her next chapter, when she has doubts, but not to jump too far ahead, but she sort of pushes those aside because she wants to think she's done the right thing. And
we all do when we do something questionable. We want to, assure ourselves that we made the right choice when we might not have.
Exactly. I feel like she's desperate to have made the right choice, and because she's acted on emotion. And again, I think of a child lying in bed, and he's clearly never going to walk again, even if he does wake up. But she still at this point doesn't know, will he live? And who she thinks is his murderer is there.
Mm-hmm. I sympathize with her.
I totally see me doing that.
Yeah, I could see me killing his ass right in the end, blood everywhere. But that wouldn't make it right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And
yeah.
When we're analyzing this, we have, like, the benefit of knowing that Tyrion has nothing to do with this plot. Right. So that also probably kind of factors in for me, because I know Tyrion is innocent, and I know Littlefinger is behind everything. So that makes her look stupid, but she doesn't know these things, because she, as you said, she's looking at things as they were and not how they are.
And one of the things that Marillion says to her that I thought was interesting and should have actually made her, key into something, is he said that he lost all his money at the last tourney that he attended, because he bet on Jaime Lannister to beat Loras Tyrell in the joust, I think it was. And of course, Loras Tyrell won. And so he lost all his money, but that should have made her, in her mind, go, he obviously thought Jaime was going to win. Did other people assume that Jaime was going to beat this kid wouldn't that mean, why would Tyrion bet against Jaime? Because it seems logical to assume the Kingslayer is going to win against this young knight who most people hadn't seen at that point.
Yeah,
So
and why would Tyrion? And Tyrion knows Jaime better than anyone, and Jaime is like, at this point in the story, the most legendary swordsman in the story. Like, he just is. Two-handed Jaime is a badass with a sword.
Yes, exactly. And so that should have given her a little bit of insight, but it's glossed over. She just moves right along and doesn't even consider that, because I think about the time she spent with Peter Baelish. He had her in a brothel, which should have made her go, who is this guy now? But he must have been, in that time that she waited on Ned to arrive in King's Landing, she was clearly comfortable there by the time he got there. And it says to me, because she was so comfortable in that brothel, which is bizarre if you really think about it, but she was comfortable and she felt safe. He obviously made her feel that way. He made her feel she can trust him. He had days or weeks, however long it was, to really talk to her and make her feel safe. Mm-hmm. And so she believed him so much because she had no advantage of having perspective of him outside of his area, his domain. Mm-hmm. He had her in his place, and none of these women would talk badly about him. They're all going to be, positive if she did speak to any of them. It's he had time to manipulate her, and she believed everything he said.
What I find odd about Catelyn is that when Ned was talking about, going to King's Landing, she was like, he tells her, he said, Robert would never harm me or my children or me or mine, or whatever Ned said about Robert. And Catelyn was like, the Robert you knew, but right. He's a different man. And I'm like, bitch, why you didn't apply that to Littlefinger? Like,
that's because we can't see ourselves clearly. It's like I tell everyone, I give great advice. I do not take my own advice. And Catelyn has that same flaw. She's like, it's the fallibility of self, because she believes she knows these people based on a past, where she thinks, Ned, you can't possibly know him now.
Right.
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
It's the same with her sister, even, because I think Littlefinger even tells her, you haven't seen her in a while. She's very different. And in her mind, she's still thinking of the Lysa she knew and can't imagine that that's different. And so it's hard for her to understand how Ned would view Robert the same. Yes. She has no clarity.
She doesn't. But I mean, that's basically Catelyn 5. She takes Tyrion, and there's going to be a lot of hell to pay going forward for this move. Even though this was a powerful move, it wasn't necessarily the best move for House Stark.
Oh, but it felt good in the moment.
Oh, that's how a lot of those moves feel like. They feel good in the moment, but those consequences, baby, they don't feel good.
That's how everyone on the planet gets in trouble.
Yes.
They feel good in the moment.
Yes, exactly. But I want to thank you for coming on. If you want to let the people know where they can find you again, I will link all your information in the description box, but you can just let them know.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at OMindy, OHHH, Mindy. And yeah, if you don't mind politics and A Song of Ice and Fire and some Big Brother, follow me. I'd love to chat with you.
All right. Well, I will see you guys next week. Bye.